Sitting on a porch, a demon slayer with Hanafuda earrings is brought tea by someone and gently thanks him. He apologizes to his visitor for making him watch his child and for his wife being asleep, but he does not mind, stating that it is difficult to give birth and raise a child. He then adds that he will soon leave as it is impolite to eat free food, but his host denies any disrespect, claiming that it was he who saved their lives and allowed his child to be born. The man then asks for his guest's name, wanting to preserve it, but he does not wish to identify himself despite having no hair to pass his name down. Turning to his host, Sumiyoshi, the demon slayer states that those who master their skills will meet the same fate, even in a new era, no matter the path they take. He denies Sumiyoshi's perception that he is special, claiming that he was unable to protect anything he cherished, could not achieve anything in life, and states his name is as worthless as he is. Sumiyoshi begs him not to loathe himself and deny his statements. As he does, his voice fades into Tanjiro's as he wakes up in tears, before realizing that he was witnessing a dream. As he wonders where he is, Kanao Suyuri, who had entered the room and dropped a vase just as he awakens, rushes over to him and explains that he had been unconscious for 2 months since the battle. She then mentions that she is glad he is awake as tears form in her eyes. If you are liking this video, then don't hesitate to like this video, and to see more content like this, subscribe to the art channel. So let's continue the video. Goto, a member of the Kakushi and acquaintance of Tanjiro, recalls the moment when he discovered him and his friends in the remains of Yashiwara, humorously believing they were very close, seeing them huddled together in a coma. On his way to bring some castella for when Tanjiro awakens, he sees Kano's broken vase and chides her for her silent demeanor and lack of awareness. He tells her he had brought castella for Tanjiro, only for Tanjiro himself to weakly thank him. Dropping the dessert in utter shock, Goto angrily chastises Kanao for not saying anything about him coming out of his coma before calling out to Kyo Terachi, Subi Nakahara, Naho Takada, and Aoi Kanzaki. Kyo, Sumi, and Naho are ecstatic that he has awakened, and a tearful Aoi is grateful he is alive, as he had taken her place in the mission. When he asked on his friend's whereabouts, Goto explains that Zenitsu had recovered 2 days ago, while remembering when he and the Kakushi witnessed Tenjin leaving the district with his wives while heavily wounded. Suba notes that Inosuke was close to death, and Aoi explains that the poison had taken a severe toll on him. Hearing this, Tanjiro notes that he must be hallucinating Inosuke is above them, causing all of them to look up at the ceiling. Hanging by the ceiling panels, Inosuke shocks them all by appearing alive and well. He lands on the bed, telling Tanpachiro that he had awoken a week before him. To Tanjiro's relief, Inosuke jokingly insults him for making them all worry, while Naho notes that it is he who is acting abnormal, since even Shinobu was worried about his state. Kigo then shows Tanjiro a book, flipping to a page regarding the honey badger and its impressive physical durability, mentioning how Shinobu had remarked that Inosuke was akin to it. Aoi demands that Inosuke get off of Tanjiro's bed, who then begins to argue and fight with Goto over the latter, insulting him for his ludicrous thinking, leading Aoi to try and pull him away from the Kakushi. Watching them arguing, Kanao repeatedly begs them to be quiet but is not heard, before loudly demanding that they be quiet since Tanjiro is now asleep, shocking them with her change in demeanor. Kyo then takes Kanao away so that they can cook for Tanjiro when he wakes up. That night, Tomeo's cat watches Tanjiro from a tree with Yoshiro's talisman on its collar, who remarks he is glad that the demon slayer is well. A week after waking up, Tanjiro is now out of bed. In a letter to Goto written by Aoi, she explains that Inosuke had returned to duty shortly after, and Zenitsu is on a joint mission with other demon slayers, though they are less than pleased by his constant racket, while Tanjiro had resumed rehabilitation training. While being stretched by the girls, he asks them about his new sword, but they become hesitant, revealing that Hagen Azuka had written him letters strewn with his anger and his blatant refusal to make him a new one. Though he is dismayed, Tanjiro is informed that he can enter the village where the swordsmith reside. Outside the Butterfly Mansion, a female Kakushi introduces herself and explains that she will be taking Tanjiro to the village. She gives him a blindfold, earplugs, and nose plugs to put on, as the village is kept secretive. On his journey, Tanjiro is designated with different Kakushi along the way, who are guided by different Kastabai crows to keep the village's exact location hidden. Eventually, he removes his blindfold and marvels at the sight of the swordsmith village, with all of its inhabitants wearing Hayatoko masks to conceal themselves. Though he smells a nearby hot spring, he is directed by the Kakushi to the village's chief and exuberantly thanks him. His cry of gratitude echoes around the forest and is heard by someone bathing in the hot springs. The love Hashira, Mitsuru Kanroji, realizes that someone has arrived and becomes excited. Meeting the chief, Tekshin Tekakawahara, Tanjiro introduces himself with a respectful but forceful bow and is offered sweets. Tekshin explains that Hotaru is apparently missing at this time, but that they are looking for him. Tanjiro is confused by Hotaru, But the chief explains his full name is Haganazuka Hotaru. Tekshin is dismayed at Hotaru's fiery temper even as a child, and Tanjiro apologizes since he was the one to chip his blade, only for the chief to ominously inform him it is his smith's fault for making weak blades. Understanding that Tanjiro is still unable to fight demons, Tekshin advises him to visit the hot springs and heal, adding that if Haganazuka is not found when he recovers, he will be designated a new smith. Being directed to the springs, Tanjiro suddenly hears a loud voice calling to him. Mitsuri runs down the steps to meet him while Tanjiro asks her to cover herself up. The Hashira is dismayed that she had asked someone for their name and was ignored, even when she said hello. Seeing Mitsuri distressed, Tanjiro notes that dinner is ready soon, cheering her up. At the springs, Tanjiro is suddenly hit by a loose tooth. Shocked, he looks at the only person with him at the springs. Recognizing his mohawk in previous encounters, he calls out to the tall figure, Genya Shinazugawa, only to be quickly denied. Tanjiro unclothes himself and swims over to introduce himself and asks his relations with the Wind Hashira, only for Genya to slam his face into the water and leave. At the village, Tanjiro is impressed by the large amount of food Mitsuri had eaten, who claims she really only nibbled. He explains that Genya was who she met at the springs, who she recognizes as the brother of Sanemi Shinazugawa. As Sanemi had never told her about him having a sibling, Mitsuri and Tanjiro both become upset that they may be on bad terms since they both cherished their siblings. Seeing Genya has not appeared, they both decide to give him onigiri. While walking to his room, Tanjiro asks the Love Hashira on why she joined the Demon Slayer Court, who immediately becomes flustered. She explains that she joined to find someone to marry since she wanted someone strong to protect her, and seeing that she could not just introduce herself to a Hashira, she became one, rendering Tanjiro speechless. They soon see that Genya is not in his room, and Mitsuri's attention is directed by a Kakushi to her sword being honed, asking she come to check on the adjustments. Tanjiro offers to walk her, but she explains that she will be leaving the village soon, leaving him and Nezuko dismayed. Seeing this, Mitsuri commends him for battling an upper rank and citing that such a fight contains invaluable experience, proudly stating that she is supporting the siblings, leaving them shocked by her positivity. She mentions that since he has been granted extended stay, he can train with a special weapon hidden in the village before leaving. The next day, after having breakfast provided by the village, Tanjiro and Nezuko set out to discover the hidden weapon. While walking, he notes that due to not being fully healed, his sense of smell, still able to smell the hot springs. Suddenly, he hears two voices arguing in the distance, one being a young swordsmith wanting to protect something, and the other being a demon slayer demanding he use it. He notices the swordsman is the Mist Hashira Muchiro of Tokido, but looks on and sees something familiar. He walks closer and is shocked to see someone seemingly with them, the same man from his dream. The young swordsmith continues to refuse Muchiro's request for a key, as well as claiming he would not show how to use it. As Tanjiro watches the argument behind the trees, believing he should mediate, the annoyed Mist Hashira chops at the boy's neck, rendering him unconscious. Tanjiro rushes in and confronts Muchiro, demanding he let go. He attempts to pull his hand away from the smith, but cannot move the Hashira's arm despite him being thinner and smaller. The Hashira instead demands that he let go and elbows the demon slayer's stomach, sending him to the ground in pain. He insults Tanjiro for being weak and wonders how he entered the demon slayer corp before he senses a demon inside the box he is carrying. Tanjiro swats his hand away and demands he does not touch it. He pulls the young smith from Muchiro's hold, somewhat surprising him, but the upset swordsmith refuses Tanjiro's help and declares again he would not give the key, believing the item he is worried about will break. Muchiro insults him for believing he could hold out on such circumstances and reasons that he could make another one. He asks how many people might have died in the time he is refusing to give up something trivial and remarks that a Hashira's time is more valuable than his. Since he cannot fight, all a swordsmith is good for is making weapons. Muchiro asks for the key once more, only for Tanjiro to step in to defend the smith. The frustrated demon slayer claims that he cannot stand the Hashira's demeanor, and while he concurs with his statements, he adds that a swordsmith's job is still vital, as a swordsman and a swordsmith cannot exist without each other. Muchiro suddenly cuts him off and states that he has no time to listen to a boring speech, before chopping at Tanjiro's neck to knock him out. Sometime later, Tanjiro eventually wakes up, asking if Haganazuka had been around, but the swordsmith states that he is not. Tanjiro then asks for Muchiro's whereabouts, and the smith states that he gave him the key to fend him away. Though he is dismayed, he interjected in a hopeless argument. The boy thanks Tanjiro for defending him. He then asks about the man who was with them, but is told it was a mechanical doll, which needed the key. The young smith states that the combat doll is capable of 108 movements and can overpower a person before the two then hear a loud clash, with the smith realizing that Muichiro has activated it. Tanjiro and the swordsmith watch as Muichiro engages the battle doll in a rapid skirmish. The smith states that it was built by his ancestors and is known as Yoriichi Type 0. Tanjiro asks why it has 6 arms, and the boy responds that according to his father, the doll is based on a real person, but 6 arms was needed to replicate how fast the person's movement was. Looking at the doll's face, Tanjiro recognizes it but cannot pinpoint its familiarity, asking the smith who the person was, but even he does not know, as the person was from the Sengoku period. Amazed at 300-year-old technology still not replicated now, the smith then solemnly notes that if it was to be broken, it cannot be fixed by anyone. With Tanjiro realizing why the doll means so much to him. As Tanjiro watches Muichiro fight, he is amazed at someone so young being so talented. Suddenly, a shrill voice comments that Muichiro's prodigious skill is due to being a descendant of the wielder of sun breathing. It is Muichiro's Kasuga crow. When Tanjiro notes that the Hashira doesn't use sun breathing, the crow bites him for insulting her owner. The demon slayer then notes that he saw the man in a dream, but the crow lambasts his claims that he knows someone from the Sengoku period. The swordsmith then realizes that he perhaps saw an inherited memory and possibly one of his ancestors. Happy that his claims are not out of proportions, Tanjiro asks for the boy's name, who replies he is Kotetsu. They then hear a loud crash as Muichiro lands a blow on the doll, causing extensive damage. Seeing this, Kotetsu runs away in anguish. Using his sense of smell, Tanjiro eventually locates Kotetsu up in a tree and offers his help, while remarking that he cannot give up on the doll. He states that he must try for his future self, but Kotetsu refuses to continue, leaving all of his generation's accomplishments will end with him. Suddenly, he notices Tanjiro hanging by a branch beside him and is flicked in the chin, shocked and amazed that the demon slayer climbed up quickly and silently. Tanjiro claims that even when he cannot do something now, someone will help him, and even if it is something beyond him now, his descendants will eventually do it. He proclaims his desire to defeat Muzan Kibutsuji and save Nezuko, but even he could die before fulfilling it. Yet he remains hopeful someone will do it for him. Clutching Kotetsu's hand, the demon slayer declares that they do their best together, bringing the young swordsmith to tears and inspiring him to continue. As they walk back to the doll, they notices Muichiro now on his way, having finished what he believed was a successful training session. The Mist Hashira then mentions that his own sword was snapped in training and he will now be using one from the doll, holding a broken-off arm with a blade. Kotetsu then hurries to the doll while Muichiro orders Tanjiro to dispose of his old sword, tossing it at his head. Seeing his dismissive actions, Tanjiro notes that he does not bear any malice and seems to not be doing it on purposes, though remarks that the same cannot be said of his crow. As rain falls, the smith dejectedly looks at the damaged doll, but Tanjiro wants to test if it is still functional. Setting up upright and turning the key, they are amazed to see that Yoriichi Type 0 still works. Still angered by Muichiro, Kotetsu then desires for Tanjiro to train with the doll in the hope of surpassing the Mist Hashira. Even while fighting the doll, now armed with wooden clubs, Tanjiro is overwhelmed by its speed and unable to land a hit. Moreover, in spite of his earlier inability to defend himself, seeing a way to beat Muichiro at his own game reveals that Kotetsu is both hot-headed, barbed-tongued, and keenly analytical, insulting the Hashira in front of the demon slayer and teaching him on his errors in engaging it. Wanting him to feel the urgency of beating it, Kotetsu forces Tanjiro to train without eating or drinking as punishment. Regardless, Tanjiro is still unable to land a blow, and the lack of food is weakening him further, making the task even more difficult. A slight rain offers Tanjiro something of a drink, but eventually, he suddenly faints mid-battle with Yoriichi Type 0, now armed by Kotetsu with real swords. Seemingly seeing himself in the Sanza River, Tanjiro walks the bridge to the afterlife, but accidentally falls into the river. While dizzy from the hunger and surrounded by dark water, he feels himself being warmly massaged and sees a shiny stone at the bed, even able to smell it. Upon touching, he finds himself awake again and mid-attack with the battle doll. He detects a new scent different to the opening thread and looks at specifically moving arms and legs of the doll. Now knowing how to attack, Tanjiro dodges a swing to his head and gets down low, but he fails to make significant contact and slumps to the ground. Seeing his closest successful strike yet, Kotetsu offers some food, much to the exhausted and weary Tanjiro's gratefulness. Having eaten and regained his stamina, Tanjiro fares better against the bladed Yoriichi Type 0 and is able to see its movements before they happen. Backing away to plan a strike, he sprints at the doll and leaps up, going over it as he descends and bringing his blade down to slash it. However, he pauses mid-attack, unwilling to destroy something too valuable to Kotetsu. Unexpectedly, the swordsmith calls for him to strike it, realizing he can still fix it should it break and allowing Tanjiro to finish his goal. As the doll nearly hits him, cutting through his hair, Tanjiro twists his body and makes contact, breaking the blade he was using and falling to the ground. Kotetsu runs to him, and the demon slayer apologizes for the broken sword, but the smith does not mind. They then hear as the doll's body breaks open from where it was hit, the head crumbling away to reveal a sword hidden inside. Tanjiro and Kotetsu are in disbelief to see a sword over 300 years old before them.